I'm Mark, and this is the Mr. Productivity Podcast, the podcast to help solopreneurs banish overwhelm, reduce stress, and get more done. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking with Michelle B. Griffin, an internationally certified personal brand and marketing strategist who has devoted her career to connecting people, growing communities, and building brands. As the brand therapist, Michelle consults and trains professionals and leaders worldwide to clearly communicate their story, confidently share their expertise, and positively grow their careers and businesses with personal brands that make a statement and make a difference. Now, before we dive into the show, I want to invite you to sign up for my free 21-day productivity challenge. As a solopreneur, you've got a lot to do, and this challenge will help you be more productive at it. Just invest 1 minute in reading one tip every day that will transform your productivity habits in less than 1 month. You can either go to MrProductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com, or you can sign up by clicking the link in the show notes. Now, on with the show. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ski. It is awesome to finally be here and chat with you today.
Now, you and I are a member of a community, and that's how we met. And the one downside people don't get to see on the show, because it's audio only, is you like vibrant colors. So you're just going to have to imagine or go to one of Michelle's social media platforms. She'll show you how to do that later in the show, or tell you how to do that later in the show. But she likes vibrant colors. But this is an audio podcast, so you can take it on your run. So I wanted Michelle on the show because, as I said in the introduction, she's all about branding. And she's got a book that we're going to talk about throughout the show and at the end. And because branding, this is where I want to start off with this, Michelle, is people think, well, I don't have a brand. You have a brand. You may not be intentional about your brand, but everyone's got a brand. Am I correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, by default, a brand is your connection, the promise, what people think of you. And what I do is really work with people to have intentionality and strategic brands, because we want to shape the narrative of, the genuine true us. So people rightly assume and know who we are, because if we're not intentional, people just make up things or assume incorrectly. And so for your audience of solopreneurs who are working so hard in their businesses, that's the last thing we want, right? To assume the wrong things about people.
You use one of my favorite words, intentionality. I talk a lot about intentionality when it comes to time management and being productive, because there's only two ways you can approach something: proactively, which is intentionality, and reactively. And I tell people, it's not going to end well if you're reacting all day long. And I think you feel the same way about your brand. You have to be intentional, not reactive about it.
I absolutely love the words proactive and reactive, because I think the same way in branding. You have to take, the curve ahead of you and say, you know what, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is who I'm for, and this is a transformation I bring. So when people know these things and you have that clear path, that North Star for us, we absolutely are leading with being proactive versus reactive. Because face it, when you're reactive, you get off track every single day in your productivity and your branding. Similar patterns for sure.
So let's go back to branding 101. Let's imagine somebody is listening to this interview and they're like, okay, I'm a solopreneur, but I don't understand branding. I mean, when I hear McDonald's, I understand what their brand is, or Tesla or Apple. So how can a solopreneur, obviously solopreneur is solo, just them, how can they create a brand? Because when I was first coming up with my brand, I'm like, branding, I mean, I would immediately go to Apple or Nike or something like that. So let's start at the ground floor on how a solopreneur can approach branding.
Well, I'm so glad you brought this up, because first of all, when people go to branding, they make the misconceptions that branding is just your colors, your logo, your fonts, your pictures. And those are a part of it. That's a visual part. But the way I approach branding with my 7-step framework, and also in the book framework we use, we take an approach first with building, first your mindset, like in the book, we have mindset, and also with the framework I have, you have to know that you are here to make a difference. You're here to serve people with your expertise. You absolutely need a brand, and the brand starts with your internal clarity, that foundation of who you are, what you stand for, what transformation you bring, who are you here to help. All those are brand strategy foundations. And that's where I see a lot of people fall off or really not know better because everyone just rushes to the tangible things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The colors, the fonts, and those come later. Those are defined by the strategy, the brand strategy and the foundation. So as a solopreneur, yes, it looks awesome to see Nike and all that. But to be honest, when people talk branding, it almost kind of irks me that all they talk about are those, right? And it's like, no, we solopreneurs absolutely need to have our brands carved out. So I absolutely say you need to start by first knowing your goals. Why are you here? I mean, most of your audience, Mark, are solopreneur one-person businesses, correct? Trying to monetize their expertise and their services and products. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So absolutely, you need a brand. And if, here's another thing, Mark, people don't like the word brand because a lot of people say, I don't want to be put in, I'm not a product, but you have to, you have to define and differentiate who you are so that you stand out and you attract the people that you're here for, right? Because otherwise they have no idea if we don't carve that intentionality out of who we are, our vision, our mission, and most importantly, our why we're here. Because people in this day and age, they really remember the why.
I saw a short from Gary Vaynerchuk about a week ago, and he took off a sneaker and it was a Nike sneaker. And he goes, people don't understand. This sneaker is just a commodity. The swoosh is worth $1 trillion. He says, you are all worried about the thing. You're a commodity. I'm a commodity. What is not a commodity is awareness. And I think that's where branding ties into this. What do you want to be known for? Like, I'm a daily content creator. I'm always creating content across a plethora. It's my word of the month right now. Plethora. I love that word. A plethora of social media networks. But every time I post, I'm actually sharing part of my brand. Is that not true?
No, absolutely. And I know you just recently, in the last 6 months or so, rebranded as Mr. Productivity.
Yes.
So that helps us know even more. That is intentionality and foundational one-on-one to the 10th degree. That really carves an anchor in my mind. And that's what you want to do. You're right. As the solopreneurs we are, there's thousands of people who do what we are. But when we carve our brand and what we stand for and what we're for, we're creating a promise, an internal connection, emotional connection. I hate to use the word Nike, but we know they're here for the athletes inside of us, right? They're here for empowerment. And your brand, Mark, is here for productivity and organization and helping people get over the overwhelm. I know that about you. You've communicated that so well. You've been intentional. You have a brand foundation. Whether you did it or not, I know. And also because you've been doing this for quite some time. And that's the thing too. You have to start now. It's not a one-off. You don't just dip your toes. You're all in on this and you have to keep going. The more you are going, the more awareness, the more authority you build, and the more people get to know you. And no, not you, but that you are for them. And that's the thing, Mark, we're not here for everybody, right? You absolutely cannot. And there's enough abundance to go around, but carving your brand out helps the right people come to you.
So let's talk about the mistakes when it comes to branding. Obviously, the first mistake, I got to imagine, we'll call it mistake 0, not even like paying attention to your brand. That's got to be the first one. So we'll just set that off to the side right now, because I think in the few minutes we've been on the show already, you've made it very clear the importance of brand. But I'd like to talk about what are some other mistakes people make, I should say, when they create their brand or they think about branding.
Oh, great question. Well, one of my most important things, or one of the things I find the most rather, is that people just start launching, you became a solopreneur, so awesome. But then you start going into, I'm going to do a business card or a logo or a website or all the bells and whistles, tangible things. That's great. But you're like, say you're building a house and you just decided you're going to go pick out the kitchen cabinets and the living room furniture before you poured that slab, right? Or even considered with an architect or plans. It looks pretty and it looks good, but you're not going to have the structure that supports you, because face it, the logo, the colors, the website, all that needs to come from the strategy of who you are, who you help, how you help them, and what you're going to be known for. So I think that most people just don't realize it. I think branding in most people's minds is that pretty stuff, and you've got to do the fun stuff. Now, I think it's actually fun to really, that's why I had to create a 7-step framework, Mark, because I saw that too many people were just falling flat and, wasting their time, their sanity, their money, doing all the things. And then they realize, oh, this is really hard, or I'm not getting traction, or the right people aren't finding me. And so I always say, look, let's back up and start from square one. Let's get that blueprint going. And then we build from there. And then in the end, you have that beautiful brand house, right? And so you absolutely know you can create content with ease. Your website isn't hard. I see too many clients that spend money on websites. They hire people and then they don't even know what to put on it, right? Have you ever encountered that?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of the most important things. And that's why I say, Mark, my thing is I take a foundational versus fluffy approach to branding. And let's face it, the word personal branding is just thrown all over the place, right? And it's not hashtags, it's not selfies, it's getting that foundational strategy and plan so you have that North Star. So one other thing, I think that's the most important thing. Absolutely. And then, maybe just not being intentional once you do it or consistent. Now, Mark or Ski, I got to interchange,
okay.
right?
You're going back and forth. That's quite all right.
Yeah, multilingual name there. So you are like the king of productivity and also consistency, right? I mean, you've been doing this podcast since 2017. I know you run every day. I mean, you just are, if we could translate your consistency to building our brands, absolutely, we would just be on top of the world. So that's the most important thing, is staying in the game and just keep serving people as you are here to do.
You mentioned recently I changed the name of not only my podcast, but also my website. So we both have the same coach, Krista Mullian. And back in December, my website used to be markstruczewski.com and mrproductivity.com was a redirect. And she says, you need to flip that. You also need to change the name of your podcast, which was a tough nut for her to crack because I'm like, it's my name. And she explained to me, no one's going to go Google how to Struczewski something. But they're going to go Google how to be productive. And so I switched the name. So markstruczewski.com, not that anyone's going to go there, is a redirect to mrproductivity.com. And now the podcast, amazingly, I changed it to the Mr. Productivity Podcast and my downloads shot up because now people are finding it. And then she helped me to niche down the solopreneurs. I can help everybody. But the problem is, and you know this as a branding expert, if you say, I can help everybody. Well, no one's going to pay attention because your message is kind of fuzzy. But if you say, I help solopreneurs, then if you're a solopreneur, you're like, ooh, I got to listen to him or her because they're speaking my language. And so you think you're going to lose when you niche down and when you get really clear on your brand. But what happens, you may get fewer people, but those will be the right people.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly what I do with my 7 steps. I can real quick share that so that this might give people a quick, easier path. So number 1 is perspective. Know who you are, what makes you tick, internal clarity. And that is really my piece that I love helping my clients just really understand, who am I? What am I going to stand for? What makes me unique? Okay. Get really clear on who you are, because face it, a lot of times we're just going through all the motions. We have really no idea, as I say, it's so hard to be the consumer of your own brand. It's hard to see the frame of the picture. You might be able to help others, but it's so hard to get your ideas out. So I really help my clients. Number 2 is step 2 on the roadmap framework is your people. Now, when I say people, exactly what you just said, Mark, you can help everyone. But people for me is a 2-pronged thing. First, it's your ideal audience, your persona, that one person. And as you said, the more niche you can get, the better. It's so much better to start narrow and you'll get the attention. You can always go a little bit wider later, but you're going to get the faster traction because the world's just too crowded. Like if this was like 1995 and the internet just started, you would probably get all the attention, but no, this is not. We're I call it an attention pandemic is what I call it this day and age. So the more niche we can get, the better. But I also call it our partners. We absolutely need people and alliances to cross-pollinate, as you will, other people's audiences to grow. Like-minded people are going to help us grow our brand even faster. So those 2 people are definitely who we're here for and who's going to help us grow. Now, number 3 is probably my favorite part, is positioning. If we are not differentiated, Mark, just like you said, you just differentiated yourself not too recently. And I can tell from your podcast, and I'm sure all your Google stats and maybe all your clients that are coming to you, I'm sure it's just absolutely crystal clear. Mr. Productivity. I mean, That is as clear and well positioned. But you took who you are, because I read your website. You struggled early on too. I remember that. If anyone wants to read Mark's About section, it's awesome on his website. It tells his whole story. And when his coach back in the day said, Mark, why don't you just focus on productivity? You're the most productive person I know. And you see, that was an example, Mark, and you couldn't see it, the forest for the trees for yourself, right?
100%.
Yeah. So anyway, positioning is how we're going to take your internal clarity of who you are, the external clarity of the person and all their problems. Like, you really need to know the problem you're solving for these people, right? And you combine that with your positioning, and you've got excellent positioning now with Mr. Productivity. You're an anchor in my mind. So once you get that.
Are you one of the million? Join over 1 million people, which may be a slight hyperbole, and get productivity tips that will help you live a more productive life. Head on over to mrproductivity.com/insider.
Now you can really start talking about your messaging. You can get your messaging right because things are clear now. So that's number 3 is positioning. And then we go to number 4. You're ready to go into the tangible fun stuff. You remember the pretty websites and the colors and all that social stuff? That's what comes in number 4. That's when you start doing the tangible visual branding. You put your website together because now you're super clear in who you are, how you're different, and who you're here to help, and their problems you're solving. So that translates into your social profiles, your website, all that stuff. I'm going really high level here. There's a lot more. But then number 5 is where you get out there and share that message. When you publish, number 5 is publishing. Just like you do, Mark, you're a content creator daily. You're doing this podcast for 1,000+ episodes and counting. You are getting your message out in different areas to the right people. And that's what you do when you publish. You pick one main platform to get started on social and one of your own. That's my high recommendation. One own one and then one social, and you interchange with that. So that's very high level. Number 6 is when you start really amplifying your message on the promotion stage. That's when you start really getting, out in the media. You might, get on podcasts. This is when you might start a podcast. If you didn't make that your platform in number 5, you can start speaking. There's obviously so many ways to align with people to just really amplify that message in the promotion stage. And then number 7 is where things are just kicking on, you're growing, and this is number 7 is propel. You're continually building, refining, measuring. I'm really big, Mark, about when we set your foundation up in number 1 perspectives, we hit your goals. Like, what are you here for? What does this look like? And then we have baseline metrics in the perspective phase. And so propel, we're going to check them and we're going to keep tweaking them so that your next level of growth just keeps going on. And by then you were rocking and rolling as with your brand. And guess what? It doesn't end there. You're just going to keep propelling higher and higher and higher. So I hope that roadmap gives some high level clarity to those listening, because I know branding is a very hard subject or overwhelming, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I just love how, look at these 7 that we went back, we talked about mistakes right before, and you said one of the mistakes is people enter at number 4. Mm-hmm. Like, forget the perspective and my people and positioning. I just want to design the cool website and the cool banner and Canva. But the problem is that's great. You're going to get there, but it's step 4, not step number 1. Yeah. You got to get the clarity. So at the end of the show, listener, we're going to tell you about Michelle's book and how she can help you. So if this is overwhelming, take a breath. Don't worry. We're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to help you at the end of the show. So stick to the end, and Michelle will tell you all about that good stuff. So, but I want people to understand, yes, the tangible stuff is fun. We all like playing around with that and studying colors and the color wheel and all this other stuff. But you got to do the first 3 steps, the perspective, finding out who your people are, and positioning first. It's like she mentioned, you have to get the foundation, or if you're here in Texas, you have to have found the piers. My house was jackhammered recently because my kitchen was sinking by 5 inches. So they had a jackhammer in my kitchen. So that worked. That day I didn't get any work done, obviously. But they had to put the piers in to lift the house so it's level again. And And so when you're building a house, if you're building in Texas, especially Houston, make sure you call a foundation person and have your foundation checked and have it fortified before you build a house, because it's much easier when you're pouring the foundation to put those piers in than it is afterwards. And that's sort of what the perspective, the people, and the positioning is all about. I would even argue that before you start it, make sure you understand. I know this is a part of number one, your why. A lot of people go into business because, I can make money. I remember when I first became a solopreneur, people looked at me like I was Elon Musk. I'm like, yeah, not yet. Just because I'm a solopreneur doesn't mean I'm making lots of money. It's a lot of work, because when you're a solopreneur, you're the CEO, the janitor, you're the sales, marketing, you're the secretary, you're everything. People don't understand that. They just see you, it's so nice you get to work for yourself. But I had to go through all 7 of these steps. And guess what? Listener, I got bad news for you. You're going to be working on these 7 steps all the time. You will go back and go, what is my why? What's my perspective? I got the right people. So Michelle said that already on the show. You're not going to do this once and be done with it. It's a constant thing you have to revisit all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And the more you get in and work, I always let my clients and everyone know, look, when you're doing this, making sure, number one, it aligns with you. Like, you're happy doing this, because I've seen multiple people get in, they do it, and they're like, you know what, this isn't really lighting me up. So they might go in and tweak, well, I really could probably help this audience a little bit better, or maybe in this offering. So there's ways to tweak it. But as long as you get the foundation, it's like building your house. You're like, you know what, I think I need to renovate or redecorate this room. You still got your house, but you're just kind of redecorating or maybe painting a wall color. It's basically there. But in the spirit of the Mr. Productivity podcast and your brand, I would also argue that getting this foundation and getting your clear path and your roadmap, which is one of the services I give my clients, I would argue that this will make you a lot more productive. Okay, you're not going off track. You're not getting caught in the proverbial cul-de-sacs. You're not lost. You're not starting all over and going from square one. We've all been there, right? My branding system is called the brand GPS, because it's positioning you to go where a brand that takes you places, right? And you have to know where you're going. And so I see too many people, and myself included, before I really got clear, this was years ago, but before I developed my own framework that I live by, I was getting, in circles too. And to me, that is the most unproductive use of our time. Time to me, Mark, is the most important thing there is. Even more money. We can make more money, but we cannot manufacture more time. So
100%. And, as you're talking there, I want people to understand that Michelle is where she is. I am where I am because of experts, because of coaches. I don't mean Mr. YouTube. I don't mean Mr. Google or Mr. Instagram. I mean, you go out and hire a productivity coach, a branding coach, a business coach. Go hire somebody, invest your money with someone who knows how to get where you want to get. It's going to shorten the curve to get there. And I'm a big proponent of getting training. You got to get the right training, the right coaches. And I know I can hear some people in the audience already. They're saying, I don't have the money. Well, I want to tell you something that Tony Robbins says all the time. It's a question of resources versus resourcefulness. If you really want to go from A to B, and going to A to B is going to cost you $5,000, and that's your dream, you got to find a way to fund that. Maybe you don't go to Starbucks. Maybe you get rid of Netflix, something, if you're willing to sacrifice. The problem is, a lot of people, they want to keep all their stuff, but they don't want to sacrifice, but they want the goal. Well, those 3 can't coexist. So if you want to become a brand, really good at your brand, in a few minutes, we're going to tell you how to get a hold of Michelle. Because why try to figure out on your own? Yeah, you can go buy branding books. She's got a branding book. You can go to YouTube, as I said. But if you really want to get personalized branding help, you go out and hire someone like Michelle. Because then she's going to look at you. She's going to go through the 7-step framework, and she's going to really work with you diligently. Michelle, I tell people all the time, if you want to get to the next level, you got to invest in a coach. Identify whatever that is for you, branding, podcasting, YouTubing, productivity, whatever it is. Find someone you work with well, and then invest, because you're not investing just in them. You're investing in yourself.
Oh, 100%. Because, I do what I do because of exactly why you're saying. My story also too is in 2015, I got the bug to have my own online business. Well, and theoretically that shouldn't take me long. I'd figure it out and, put my resignation in and start. Well, somehow I got caught in the proverbial professional clarity prison. I had no idea. I didn't know what I was doing. So here's what I did, Mark. I wasted so much time, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because I thought I started becoming a consumer of too many podcasts, books, articles, and then I would get sucked up into the shiny objects of courses. Oh, this course is going to tell me, be my answer, or certifications. I have a master's in PR, but yet I thought I needed all these expensive certifications and credentials, you name it. I just went in circles. And guess what? If I would have found me, like if I would have found someone like me, what I'm doing today, I would have saved myself so much time, so much money. And almost like, I kid you not, I felt so hopeless some days. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, how I'm equipped on paper. Why am I stuck here? Like, I just couldn't see the forest for the trees. And so that hurt me so much, because I was ready to get out there and just really help people with the way, the gifts I've been given and where I want to make an impact. And so to me, that's the saddest thing, of people just being stuck.
Well, we're back. Now, listener, you don't realize we went anywhere, but all of a sudden, Michelle just wasn't there. And then by the time we got reconnected, we don't know what we were talking about. You do, because you're listening to the show. And so this may seem kind of like, why'd they switch topics? Because we don't remember what we talked about a few minutes ago. We're just being honest. But you were mentioning about how you went in circles. And I wanted to tell you, I did the same thing when I was fired from my corporate job back in 2005. I fell victim to what I call the 3 C's: courses, coaches, and conferences. I thought every coach was the magic bullet. Every course was the magic bullet. Every conference was going to be the conference to make me lots of money, get lots of clients. And I didn't vet them. I don't blame the coaches, the courses, or conferences. No one forced me to hire them. I thought in my brain that was the magic bullet. And I want to tell the listener that Michelle may be your right fit for you, may not be. I may be your right fit, maybe not be. You have to do your due diligence. You have to do your own homework and find out. First of all, she talks about perspective as number one part of her 7-step framework. You need to figure out, what do you want? You need to start there, because if you want productivity help, you wouldn't go to Michelle, because she's a branding expert. So I think it all has to start with perspective. People don't understand what they need, and you may need a lot, but what's the next thing you need? So what they do, they fall victim to what I did, the 3 C's.
So true. My 3 C's were credentials, courses, and certification. So it's funny you had 3 C's too. We had this, and they were all great in their own right, but we just weren't ready for them. We falsely assumed they were the magic bullet, because you and I, at that moment, you in 2005 and I in 2015, 10 years later, did not have professional clarity. We didn't know how I wanted to get out there. Like, I could do PR, marketing. There were so many things, and I just don't, one day I'm going to write a long blog post, all the things I thought I wanted to do. I tell you, anything from being a health coach to, I went from marketing to I'll do copywriting to a health coach, maybe to something in fitness. Those are all my passions and my expertise. So that's the thing. We have too many ideas, and we cannot get out of our own heads. And so that's why it's a privilege and honor to do what I do. You're 100% right, though. There's a lot of people who do what I do, and maybe you too, but we have to find the people that resonate. That's why, bringing this all back to your brand, that's why you need to be out there. That's why the right people will recognize you, relate to you, and reach out to you, right? When your brand is defined, especially when you have the clarity and the why. People resonate on an emotional connection first, having a story attached to your brand. Yours is on your website. Mine, I tell in my book, and on many podcasts I'm on, because the right people will see themselves in you and say, oh, I need that. You're saying exactly what I needed to hear. So I'm so glad we're so much on the same level and same thing, but just different areas, Mark. It's really uncanny, except you started 10 years. You had the thing 10 years before me. So you're a little bit ahead of me there.
Well, you mentioned your book several times. So you have a brand new book. So let's talk about it. What's the book about? I'm going to guess it's about branding. Am I correct?
Yeah. So here's the thing. My first book is my co-authored book called the LinkedIn Branding Book. And before we get off, I'm going to tell you about my second book on my framework that's coming out later this year. But the LinkedIn Branding Book, The Power of Two, How to Build Your Personal and Business Brand on LinkedIn for Exponential Growth, by Michelle Squared. It's written by me, and Michelle Squared is my business partner, we have our own businesses too, Michelle Raymond in Sydney, Australia, who I've never met in person, but we wrote a book together. We have the LinkedIn Branding Show podcast together. It has the 4-step framework, how to get on LinkedIn, called the Brand Squared System. And I'm not going to really go through it through time's sake, another framework, because here's the thing, Mark. I'm absolutely, when I work with my clients, when we work in the brand on the number 4 section, I really think everyone needs a point of view and a framework to communicate that message. And so, again, we have the attention pandemic out there, right? We need something to make it simple and easy for people to digest. So we made the Brand Squared System in this book. I'll tell you the 4 sections real quick. I won't detail them. Number 1 is mindset. Number 2 is foundation. That foundation word I love. Fusion. How do you bring your business and company brand together? And multiplier. How to, find your partners, build community, and amplify your brand. But this LinkedIn branding book has just been tremendous. Another thing too, is part of on my framework, number 7 is how do you promote yourself? Writing this book has been one of the best things for my business because people reach out to me all the time and actually oh, I love your book. And then they book calls with me and stuff. I'm not saying write a book and you'll it's a magic bullet, but it just helps the right people, again, reach out to you. So the LinkedIn branding book has been phenomenal. And I announced a few weeks ago that I'm going to be publishing my solo framework book, my 7 steps, later this year. So I'm super excited to get that out and into the hands of people who need that foundation, right? So they don't get lost like we did.
Excellent. And what is your website?
My website is really easy. It's my name. It's Michelle B, and the B stands for brand.
Of course.
Griffin, Griffin.com. I think you'll put this in the show notes.
Yes, ma'am.
But all the links to my 2 podcasts are there, the book, I have free resources, how to get in touch if you want to work with me. Just a lot of things. I have trainings, all kind of things that you can grab on there. I always say, can you Netflix my website? That's the goal, right?
I love that. Well, Michelle, I'm so glad you were on the show today because as solopreneurs, we struggle with branding. What is branding? How should I brand? How important is it? We know you have a lot of hats to wear. You got to take care of clients. You got to create content. You got to do your brand. Just don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed. Okay. It all has to get done, but it all doesn't have to be done now. And I think if you allow yourself to get overwhelmed by everything that Michelle shared on the show and everything I shared and everything else, you're going to get overwhelmed and then you're going to go binge watch Netflix or, eat a lot of ice cream or something like that. So take a breath, take a couple nuggets of what Michelle said and okay, let me maybe go get her book or maybe let me start thinking about my why. Start small and then you start building it. Remember the Lego blocks we had as kids. Just don't try to do it all in one day. It's a recipe for disaster. So Michelle, I am so thankful that you were on the show today to share your wisdom and your insights with us. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ski. It has been a pleasure, and I love that we have so many parallels. So I've had a blast.
Wait. Don't leave yet. I have a huge favor to ask on behalf of Michelle and myself. If you receive value from this episode today, which if you listened this far into the episode, you probably did, would you please smash that share icon on whatever podcast player you listen to this episode on and share it with 2 or 3 of your friends. Let's get this knowledge of Michelle out to more people so she can help more people with her wisdom and her insights. Michelle and I both thank you. And again, if you want more information about me or to sign up for the free 21-day productivity challenge, head on over to my website, MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. Or if it's easier for you, just click the links in the show notes. And that's it for the episode this time. I'll be back with a brand new episode real soon. But before that happens, please stay productive and stay positive.